Well, hello there, you beautiful, beautiful, amazing, wonderful people. It's Monday, baby. It's Monday. And this week is going to be Idaho 4 week as we are heading ever closer to the impending trial. And with the trial heading towards us like a freight train, I think it's important to go back, way back, and look at some of the old stuff, because I know there is new interest around the case. So many people are reaching out who have found the channel on looking at other cases and things like that, such as Liam Payne, for instance, and they're getting into the Idaho 4. And the Idaho 4 trial is going to become an integral part of this channel as I head over to Idaho to get a front row seat at the debacle. But what is Monday? What is Monday? Monday is 911 call. I did a video way back when about the 911 call, and I'm going to refresh everyone's mind as we're going to go over it again, as I have the transcript in front of me, and I'm going to read it. I'm going to read it to you if my mouse goes over to the screen. So here we go. Here we go. So it says, 2 people who claimed to be at the house with the roommates when the bodies were discovered quickly came to the surviving roommate's defense and wrote that the roommates woke up, went upstairs to the kitchen, and noticed the sliding glass door was open, and it was during that time that they discovered Ethan. So the first thing to sort of pay attention to here is it says that the roommates woke up and went upstairs to the kitchen, which is odd because technically Dylan would be on the same floor. So they're talking about Bethany here, Bethany Funk, but it says the roommates woke up and went upstairs. So was Dylan Mortensen downstairs? We know that there was communication between them. So had they decided to bunk up together because they didn't know what the fuck was going on around the house? Maybe this is just verbiage and it doesn't really read much into it, but I find it quite interesting that that's what they say. So it says that was when they discovered Ethan. They didn't say where he was found on that floor, but it was so horrific that both girls went into shock and ran out of the house. One of the roommates had fainted, which is interesting because we was obviously told that this was initially this call. There was some confusion over potentially it was a call for someone who had indeed fainted. And the other was beyond hysterical and not making any sense. They were frantic in their actions while coming out of the house. They caught the attention of people who were walking by. The people responding on the victim's IG, Instagram, claimed to be 2 of those people. They implied that the roommate who fainted had already dialed 911. So they'd called 911, then they'd fainted, but was so distraught that they fainted, so they couldn't speak to the dispatcher on the phone, or the dispatcher couldn't understand. There was some confusion. Obviously, they've picked up the phone, they've tried to call 911, they've then become so distraught or collapsed to the floor. Someone else has taken over the call, apparently. This is all apparently, so that the dispatcher could understand. The info that the bystander who picked up the roommate's phone could give the 911 dispatcher was she just saw her friend run out of the house and collapse. So that obviously clarifies why the 911 call stated that someone was unconscious, not that someone, there's someone that a lot of people had queried. That's something that was queried before, do you know what I mean, around the unconscious person. So that seems to clear up that somewhat. So that's how the 911 call was made on the roommate's phone, and by someone else, and why the call went out for an unconscious person. While that bystander was on the phone with 911, the other roommate was hysterically trying to explain that something was wrong with Ethan. By this point, several more people had stopped to see what was happening, so there was becoming quite a crowd of people around the house. They'd stopped to see what was happening, and 1 or 2 of them went into the house to see if they could help him. There were multiple people in the yard at this time, and those people began contacting other people, other friends, and was saying that somebody in the house was badly hurt. Someone called Ethan's brother Hunter to tell him something was wrong with his brother because he lived close to the house. And someone called one of the other victim's boyfriends, as he was also Ethan's best friend. They didn't go into details on either of those boys and whether they had arrived before the paramedics did. But it sounds like that did actually happen. They didn't go into detail on what kind of injuries Ethan had sustained. They also didn't say if anyone went in to check on the other roommates on the other floor before paramedics arrived, but somewhat implied that someone did. The only details I gave or I heard about the scene itself was that it was incomprehensibly bloody. While those people were in the house checking on Ethan and possibly the other roommates, the paramedics then arrived to a very chaotic scene, believing that they were to assess an unconscious person outside, but they were redirected to go inside to help someone who was badly hurt. So they walked into the house unaware that it was a crime scene and contaminated most of everything on the second floor. It doesn't sound like the roommates roaming throughout the house or anything like that. It sounds like the scene was just contaminated by numerous people who were trying to help, unaware and unable to comprehend what they were looking at was actually a crime scene. They go on to say, my heart breaks for these two poor innocent young females. Not only have they experienced trauma so brutal that it cannot, it can't help but change who they are at their core. But they will have to live with the fear that someone might be coming for them. And they grieve the loss of 4 friends plus a life they once had that will never exist again. And if that wasn't traumatizing enough, they also get to live with millions of people publicly criticizing, persecuting, incorrectly judging them for actions that people assume they may or may not have taken. So that was a transcript from somebody who back in the early days had spoken on the 911 call, what had actually transpired at 1122 King Road around the time of the crime and the morning after. Obviously, we don't know how true this is. It kind of fits in with some of the things that subsequently come out. We heard through different media sources about Hunter being there, the interactions potentially with Ethan, trying to get into the room and trying to ascertain what had actually gone on, what had happened. So this could be quite an accurate representation of what happened. The interesting thing is, even to this day, we're now 2 years down the line, and we still haven't heard a 911 call. We've heard nothing more about it. There's nothing in the court transcripts. There's nothing that's discussed it any further. The only information is this, and what we've kind of heard about the aftermath of the crime via legacy media, the likes of News Nation, Ashley Butfield and co. But we'll see. We'll see if anything comes out. We'll see if any more is brought up upon, on the 911 call itself. You've got a contaminated crime scene. That's the biggest issue here, is the crime scene was absolutely contaminated. We don't know whether one of these people actually found the knife sheath somewhere else. Did they find it? Did they move it? What was touched? What wasn't touched? We know that there's now blood been found on one of the stair banisters. Did it belong to somebody who was there in the aftermath of this crime? We don't know. You'd think if that was the case that there'd have been due diligence and that would have been ruled out. You would hope that everything was ruled out. Some of this just simply don't make sense. But anyway, let me know down below what you think, and I will catch you all tomorrow when we're going back to the camera that was set up behind the house. Did it indeed catch a naked person running? And does the time bear any significance to this crime? Keep your eyes peeled, as this week is Idaho 4 week. Love you all. Mwah.